Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Ben Chiriboga, the Chief Growth Officer here at Nexl, coming to you with another OneFirm webinar. I am very, very excited. I'm going to be introducing our guests today, Jason and Barbara. But before I do, I want to just give everybody just a few minutes to weigh in here and get their seats. I'm very, very excited though to be back with everybody. Just very quickly, Jason, Barbara, welcome. How are you? How are things going while we let everybody in?
All good. Thanks for having us, Ben.
Yes, I'm very, very excited. Jason, how are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you very much to you, Ben, Barbara, and the team at Nexl for putting on this webinar today. Thrilled to be a part of it.
Yeah, we're very, very excited to see everybody. We're going to be tackling something really interesting, of course, which is the idea of breaking down barriers and silos, and we're going to be doing it in a really interesting way. I'm not going to be giving it away, but we're going to have a lot of fun here, and we're also going to get you guys involved, the audience here. Jason, Barbara, before we go into the specific bios, you guys are really calling from opposite ends of the world here. Why don't you guys just tell everybody how's everything? Tell everybody where you're at, and I love bringing around. You know, it's still a miracle to me that you can host a webinar between three people in completely different time zones, and somehow it makes it work. Jason, where are you calling from today?
I am calling from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Jason's known as having one of the best backgrounds with that beautiful Salt Lake City background in the back there. And Barbara, where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates.
Yes, absolutely. So two different states. Barbara, have you ever been in Salt Lake City, Utah? And Jason, have you ever been in Dubai?
Sadly, I haven't. No.
Sadly, I have not been to Dubai either.
Wow.
It's certainly on my bucket list, though.
Yes, same to mine. So I have been in Salt Lake as I'm based in Florida here, and I've never been to Dubai, but it's definitely on the bucket list as well. Last rounding out, and then we're going to go ahead and get started, is Emma, and Emma is our, let's say, the Wizard of Oz behind the screen. She's here to help us, and Emma's going to be doing a couple of things today. So the first is that she is going to be launching a couple questions. As I said, we want this to be very collaborative. It's one of our values here at Nexl, collaboration, and maybe even one of the ways that you break down barriers. We'll get into that. But we're also going to be asking you guys some polls. We want to get a pulse check on how things are going and what you see vis-a-vis some of the substantive issues there. So please be on the lookout for that. Emma, I'm going to bring her from behind the stage to launch some of those polls. Emma, how are we looking in terms of number of people? Should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, amazing. So here we are, everybody. Welcome to another OneFirm webinar. We are going to be talking today about breaking down barriers and implementing a OneFirm, one BD strategy whenever it comes to business development. And we're going to do it hearing from Jason and Barbara by using three levers that I think sometimes go underneath the radar, or that, within law firms, we're still trying to get our hands around. The first is incentives, both monetary and non-monetary incentives. The second is buy-in and training, and what does that mean? And then the last is going to be performance KPIs and dashboarding, and really the importance of putting things in front and helping that really drive sort of actions. Today, I'm joined by Jason Castor and Barbara Koenen. Jason, Barbara, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, but I'm super excited to have you here. Jason, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about your background, and then Barbara, we'll go ahead and get into your background as well, and then kick it off.
Great, thanks, Ben, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So my name is Jason Castor. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer for the law firm of Parsons Behle Latimer. We are a regional law firm. We're headquartered here in Salt Lake City, Utah, which, by the way, in my humble opinion, has the best powder anywhere in the nation and perhaps internationally. But our law firm, like I mentioned, is a regional firm, full service. We have 11 offices in 5 Western states: Utah, Montana, Idaho, Nevada, and Wyoming. We have approximately 210 lawyers. And I've been at Parsons for 14 years now, serving in this capacity.
Amazing. Jason, that thing about powder sounds so good. It's almost like they put it on the drivers, the licenses on the back of cars. If I'm not mistaken, right?
You are correct, and home to the 2034 Winter Olympics. The second time the state of Utah has had the privilege to host the Winter Olympics.
Oh my
So that
goodness.
speaks for our good powder.
There it is. Absolutely. Barbara Koenen. Barbara, you are many things to Nexl, but why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background?
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Koenen. I have spent my entire career actually working for law firms, and I've developed my career actually starting out at reception 15 years ago, all the way to becoming a business development and marketing director / CMO for the largest law firm in the Middle East. Where I led a team of about 30 people. It was a really exciting career. And at some point last February, I thought I should pivot a little. And then I spoke with the team at Nexl, and they thankfully welcomed me with open arms. So I'm very pleased that I've joined them very recently in the client success team. And I look forward to supporting lots of our clients on their implementation, changing and helping them with their BD and marketing processes, and how Nexl can also help them, and helping out with a bit of strategy at the same time. So very excited about that.
Very excited, absolutely, to have both of you here. Two of my favorite things. Barbara, you are originally from Dutch, and
Yes.
The Dutch soccer team is one of my favorite soccer teams, if not my favorite soccer team. It's how my dad taught me to play soccer with those 1970s Dutch teams. And so, I speak to Barbara about football or soccer, and it's great to just have that. And of course, I love skiing the slopes of Salt Lake. So the two of you together, just an absolute fantastic combination. So why don't we dive in here? I'd love to hear where everybody else is from. Emma, if you want to poll the audience here and see, I'd love to see where everybody else is coming from. And then I'd also love to hear where you are from the perspective of your firms. Are you coming from a boutique firm? Are you coming from a mid-sized firm? Are you coming from a big law firm? Are you coming from not a law firm at all? Maybe a vendor, provider, partner, just somebody who's just curious about getting in. I'd love to hear. So Emma, if you could launch those and then chime in whenever we start to get some answers here. So why don't we move into the substantive part? We want to keep this nice and moving here. So as we said, we're really going to talk about driving alignment and business development activity using incentives, buy-in, and KPIs and reporting. And so why don't we set the stage? So maybe Jason or Barbara, whoever wants to go first, when you take a look at, whenever I ask the question, what does it mean to drive business development activity within a law firm? Why don't you talk to us a little bit about what are some of the things that are working today within law firms in your opinion, and some of the problems that we're still solving, which is, the great opportunities that we have, and just sort of set the stage about where we're sitting in 2024. Jason, do you kind of want to kick us off? What's working? What's not working? What's the opportunity here whenever it comes to driving business development?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'm happy to jump in and offer a couple of thoughts on that. I think from my experience, what's really important is to have structure and process in place. Because there's always this healthy tension between business development and marketing versus the billable hour. And I think we all know which typically wins if we don't have structure, if we don't have process, and if we don't have a plan in place. And I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for firms that if you don't have some type of a process in place, and some type of a structure that guides and drives your business development and marketing activities, I think we all will run into this situation where there's these sporadic random acts of BD and marketing. And I don't think that's, a sustainable path forward for successful growth. So for me, I think that's probably the biggest opportunity for most firms is getting buy-in from the appropriate leadership teams within your respective firms to develop a structure in a process that you have attorneys go through as it relates to business development and marketing. And something that I know we'll talk about in a moment is how you can measure that and how you can incentivize that. But again, I think that so there's opportunity there. And again, I think just the big challenge is without structure, without process, and frankly, without accountability, it's really hard to keep that momentum going forward because client demands are critically important. And for associates that are working for shareholders, who is, that is their client as well. Those demands are real, they're intense. And at the end of the day, that's going to win.
Yeah, beautiful. What I'm hearing is what's working is that there is business development activity, but what's not working is the idea of how to operationalize it and how to really sort of make it a machine. Barbara, what's your perspective over the course of your career and even just today here where you get the chance to sit in and see multiple? What's working whenever it comes to business development, and maybe what's not working? What's the opportunity to solve here?
Yeah, so I think I'm fully aligned with Jason, but I would like to add, I think that we maybe have to take it a step back even where we look at even the definition of what is sales and business development. I think even the definition is broken, or at least it doesn't work for all firms. And maybe some firms will have a different terminology that they might use for potentially the same thing. But even that definition isn't necessarily clear between, say, fee earners and business development and marketing functions. And I think this ties in with expectation, because partners and associates, etc., the fee earning group in general, they may have certain expectations towards, if you have a full-blown business development and marketing team in place, versus if you wouldn't have that, And for some firms, I suppose they wouldn't even use the word sales. They would use the word business development. In my opinion, those are two very different things. Sales is actually just really, closing the deal and making sure that you get, revenue in and increase your revenue. Business development is a tool or a means to achieve that, but it's not that thing. So the question here that arises is, where is the responsibility for business development versus sales, if these were two things that were considered in a law firm? Now, I think I would say probably, and Jason, you might have your views on that, but I would probably say from my experience about most of the firms, at least that I've worked in and that I work with now, 80% of them, I would say, they don't have a sales process. They have a business development process, if there is a process, as you rightly said, Jason. But it's all focused around business development. How can we develop our clients, our relationships, and drive revenue from those? But it's not necessarily about, knocking doors, making deals, pushing sort of like those deals through, and who would be responsible for that.
Jason, quick thoughts on Barbara's distinction here between BD and sales?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important distinction. I think as I think about this, the business development process is really the infrastructure that you have internally in terms of the support, whether it's from an in-house BD and marketing team, with a specific set of BD professionals that are helping attorneys with for example, lead generation, with client intel, with identifying opportunities. I think where the point of distinction or differentiation comes in is actually having that sales process where the attorney is taking it through introduction to, let's just call this a prospective client, from introduction to identifying a potential need, to proposal, to a pitch, to closing that deal. And I think, I don't see a lot of that in mid-sized law firms, and frankly, at Parsons, while I believe we do a lot of things differently, we do not have a granular, defined sales process, and I think that's the distinction.
Yep, absolutely. Barbara, anything really quick before we jump into some of the levers that we can all start to pull to maybe drive a little bit more of this operational efficiency here? Anything real quick?
Understanding of indeed the definition, but with that, I think comes managing expectations. So being clear on who does what. So if that
Yeah.
was, as Jason, I completely aligned with Jason and his thinking around business development versus sales. But if BD is like a process on its own, then who is responsible? Whether it's a BD team, a lawyer, it doesn't matter. It needs to be understood between everyone.
Nice. Okay. I am before we get into incentives, and we're going to go through incentives as a major lever to pull, buy-in, and understanding what top-down and bottom-up buy-in looks like, and sort of the change management, and finally, reporting and KPIs. I want to check in with everybody. Emma, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Any responses very quickly to the poll? I wanted to just check in and see how everybody's doing. Emma, did you see if any responses came in from there?
We've got a couple. It seems like a lot of people are from the US and Canada, just if you're curious on where people are tuning in from today. And
Okay.
then we do look like we have a majority are here not from a law firm. But I'm just getting a couple of messages in the chat as well. We do have someone from that larger size big law firm, and New Jersey, and then mid-size in Minneapolis. So
Okay.
it sounds like a good variety here this morning.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, if the polls don't work, everybody, just go ahead and put it in the chat, and Emma's going to go ahead and look at the chat. So why don't we jump into our first substantive point, which is incentives. Barbara, Jason, does anybody want to take incentives first? I know that both of you have had the opportunity to set up incentive type programs. Who wants to go first? Jason, maybe you wanna just talk a little bit about incentives and what you think about, and maybe double click on some of the use cases that you've seen have worked.
Yeah, sure. And I think might be helpful is to share an example. Going back to my earlier remarks about structure and process. One of the things that we did as a firm, and this ties into incentives, of course, is putting that structure and process around a very structured associate business development and marketing initiative. We have the philosophy at Parsons that we want to provide all of our associates with the tools and the resources that they are going to need to not only be a successful lawyer, but also to be very successful at generating their own books of businesses. And when we hire an associate at Parsons, our objective is to have this individual be a future owner of the law firm as a shareholder. And so we thought about business development and marketing a little bit differently, and putting that structure around an initiative that's geared towards helping associates from whether they're a first year or a second year, third year, wherever they come into the firm at, all the way till the point where they're up for shareholder at our law firm, is to have that process in place where we help them in terms of coaching, in terms of training, and putting a program together that is geared towards their future success. So what that looked like for us was really changing how we thought about BD and marketing, starting with our leadership at the firm that understood the importance of this, providing the resources for us to provide incentives for our associates, and to encourage them to start making the necessary steps to build out their networks and to start building their profile within the legal community, within the business community, ultimately, to create opportunities for themselves and for the firm. So we created this associate business development and marketing initiative. All of our associates are required to have an annual business development and marketing plan. I meet with every associate on a quarterly basis to start with, I help them design and develop their BD and marketing plan based upon their strengths, their weaknesses, the practice that they wish to build. And then I meet with them on a quarterly basis to ensure that they are moving the needle, to brainstorm if they're having challenges, to work through those challenges, and to advance and expand their thinking as it relates to business development and marketing. And we could talk, in a moment also about this distinction between BD and marketing. But we put this plan in place whereby on a weekly basis, all of our associates have to report all of their business development and marketing activities. We worked with an engineer a few years back to develop a platform that was designed for associates to enter their business development and marketing activities on a weekly basis with two really important criteria. One, that it would take them 5 minutes or less to do so, and that it would have minimal data entry. That enables us to track their marketing activities, to track their business development activities. And we put a point value on all of these activities, ranging from a low, 1 point activity all the way to, for example, originating a new client where you get 40 points. On a weekly basis, we provided reporting to all of our associates. We had them segmented by teams, so it was more of a team-based activity from the outset. And at the end of the quarter, we provided financial cash incentives to the first, second, and third place teams based upon their total points. We also gave out individual spiffs and bonuses to associates that did exceptional work throughout the quarter. So that could be, by way of example, the associate that opened the most new matters for the quarter, or that originated the most number of new clients. What we saw from this is, we were able to really track activities that lead to success. We were able to, assess where a first and second year is based on, their activities and what they should be doing relative to their experience, and how that differs from, say, a 5th or 6th year associate. And we have different expectations, obviously, for where you're at in your career. But putting this structure around it, having the ability to measure this, having the ability to get together on a quarterly basis and talk about our successes, our challenges, share best practices, and then, of course, to provide that, not only that financial incentive to our associates, but also to provide them with that individual recognition. And I don't think we talk enough about that, but I think it's super important, that individual recognition for their achievements, whether that's from on a BD standpoint or just generally speaking as it relates to the legal practice that they're developing. Recognition is key, and I think law firms oftentimes don't do a very good job at that, and it's something that our firm is hyper focused on. But putting this into place and putting the structure around it, we've seen tremendous success, and I'd be happy to talk about it a little bit later in terms of where that's led us to.
I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that you brought in the non-monetary, because we're going to get into the drivers here, financial and non-financial. I'm trying to brush up on my French, and so I'm using Duolingo. And while I don't get monetary rewards every single time I complete a task, I do get on the leaderboard. And it's a point of pride to me to not break not only my streak, but also to get on that leaderboard. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But to your point, I think it sometimes flies underneath the radar about how motivating actually that can be, and that sort of status and recognition. Barbara, you want to come at it? I know that during your time at Altamimi, there was BD challenges, and you did some really creative things around incentive programs. Tell us a little bit about that, but also maybe just reflect on what you heard from Jason and that associate program, and sort of starting young, to put it in so many words.
Mais bien sûr, Ben. I think, I fully follow Jason, and we've done similar things in the past across a number of firms that I've worked with. And I've always felt the BD challenges, they work really well because, lawyers generally are really quite competitive. It's in their nature. That's why they also became a lawyer. And it just helps them to sort of yeah, I think it's gamifying the process, which helps them to also understand the bigger picture, what role they play in it. I think it helps to give people, a sense of ownership. When everything is just there and there is an expectation, but as Jason said earlier, there's no process in place, it's going to be really difficult. And what a BD challenge does is actually it forces you to follow a particular process. Whether it's, you want people to become more active on the business development front, so taking a more proactive approach rather than reactive. That's obviously fantastic for the firm and the outcome overall in terms of results, in terms of bottom line changes and revenue increase, etc. But it also helps, BD and marketing teams quite cleverly to also put structure in place and to make lawyers, fee earners follow that structure, because that's just designed for the greater good, right? We don't put these structures in place because we love them so much, or we want everyone to follow and do more admin work. That's not the goal in life. What is the goal is for all of us to be able to achieve better results, and a challenge can help with that. But I think aside from sort of like because challenges are oftentimes linked with financial incentives, and that's a motivator, etc. Another approach that we've seen is to also make sure it's part of their remuneration program or their appraisal process. So, for example, it could be, an annual review that is being done whereby business development plays a key role. And I think as long as firms do not do that and do not consider that to be part of, again, it leads back to expectations of, fee earners and part of their roles, then it's going to be really quite difficult for, the business development and marketing team to be aligned with the firm's, KPIs, goals, objectives, etc., and achieve that, because a BD team on its own can never achieve that. It's the firm as a whole. So it's, back to your point, Ben, about collaboration, about obviously working together in various different ways that is going to help. And also I wanted to pick on the individual recognition part, which, as you said, with your program that you're following, the badges that you get on, the stars that blink in your screen, is the gamification combined with obviously, recognition, feeling rewarded, which doesn't always come financially for everyone. And I think it's a huge part of it. I think especially because in law firms, we typically see two different groups of people. We see the rainmakers, those who really enjoy going out for business development, meet people, close deals. And then we've got a group of people who really dislike that. They just want to do the lawyering work. That's why they joined a law firm, and they don't really see sort of like the role that they would play in the whole BD sales marketing piece. And this recognition also in a BD challenge can go both ways, because in a challenge, whether you call it a BD or marketing challenge, could be rewarding those people who would love to write, for example. They can draft articles about specific topics. And there is those who win clients. So firms have to be careful with regards to the point award system. I've been, slammed for that a number of times, because they have said it wasn't right, it wasn't justified, we should do it in different ways, which is all fair. But I think it's just something to take into consideration, because it's not just, you can't just launch something like that. A lot of thought goes in that. And I know, Jason, you've told us in our prep call that you've done really, really well with your firm on that, which is, I think, maybe something you want to share a bit more on.
I just before we get into it, we're making good time. I want to check in with everybody here. I'd love to hear, for those of you who are in firms, who have been in firms, what kind of incentive programs, or if you've ever used incentive programs. So there's going to be a poll or that's going to come up, or just go ahead and put it in the chat, and Emma's going to monitor that. So again, for those of you who have been in firms and have you used incentive programs, and if not, and if yes, tell us a little bit about it. We'd love to hear from you guys. We want to move into buy-in and the importance of buy-in as a lever, but I want to ask both of you, Jason and Barbara, very quickly. Where do practice groups as groups come into the idea of driving incentives? whenever I hear you, I hear a lot of individual, and there's room for the individual, but where does it sort of bubble up into specific cross-industry groups or into practice areas or some sort of cross-collaborative or even over to the firm? Have you guys, in your personal experience or even just in your experience in the industry, seen how these incentive programs work at a larger group level?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here quickly. So we have seen this across a sector approach, for example, because that goes cross-practice, cross-level, which is really helpful. So you touch on, effectively everyone. And if you do it group by group, I feel, because you want to be a bit careful with these approaches, right? When you put out a leaderboard, people will have the fear of like, oh, I don't want to be the one on the bottom of the list. I want to be the top one. So the question is, are you going to be a bit crude and you're going to actually display those people who are sort of like losing, or are you going to focus on those who've been doing really well? So I think the approaches that I've taken in the past, especially now I have children, I know which approach works best is to take the latter approach, which is focus on those that do well, and you'll see others will actually follow because they like what praise they're getting and the recognition that they get from achieving these things. So I think that's really important to sort of like keep in mind on that as well.
Jason, anything here as it aggregates up to the group level or even the cross practice group level?
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I mean, I think it's critically important, right? I mean, to at the practice level, we do things differently. We don't have a structured of a program in place. But it's my opinion that to the extent we can get, I'll use our employment and labor team here at Parsons Behle. They do a phenomenal job of group business development, group marketing related activities, and having clear sights on opportunities where we believe we have a chance to expand our employment work with existing clients at the firm. I mean, I think one of the greatest opportunities all of our firms have is if we were to be incredibly focused and process driven on trying to expand work with existing clients. There's so much work there. I think that's a lot. There's a lot less resistance. There's a lot less time and energy and money that goes into growing and expanding work with existing clients as opposed to pursuing work from a brand new client. I know one of our major goals for this upcoming year is really going to be focused on driving additional business with existing clients. And we've been very successful in doing that over the years. But I think with a little bit more attention, more structure, and more reporting and accountability, we'll be even more successful in doing so.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to reporting and accountability pretty soon here. But before we do, let's go into buy-in. Okay, so again, let's right size us. And I'm going to stop really quickly. Emma, anything on incentives? How has the group here used incentives? Anything here that we want to check in on?
I actually don't have a response. So I think it's safe to maybe assume that incentives aren't a massive program right now.
All right.
In the firms of those who have joined us.
Okay. All right. Well, we something new then to bring back to everybody's firm. So why don't we move in then to buy-in? And Barbara, maybe we want to start with you. Buy-in really is, it can be top down, and I think a lot of us when we think of buy-in is, well, we have executive buy-in, we have executive support. But there's also bottom-up buy-in, of course, which is I have something that resonates with every level of management, every level of structure, every level of the organization. And sometimes the top end and the bottom up buy-in is what you want to sort of have this virtual cycle. But you want to talk to us maybe specific examples about how to orchestrate buy-in and really get something that looks like everybody's really ready to wave the flag here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting topic, if you ask me. I think it all starts with the outputs, like what is it that we expect from that, right? Probably we can sort of like group this into one concept, which is change management, because
Mm.
around all of the business development processes that we're going to put in place, anything that we do in relation to marketing, it's a piece of change management, because we're going to do things different than how we used to do them before. So what you need from management is to lead by example. I don't believe in a system where, management wouldn't be adopting the same principles or showing what needs to be done, what the expectations are of other partners, of other associates, etc., if they weren't leading by example. So it definitely starts top down. But then within the firm, you want to make sure that people feel, accountable and responsible for, managing those expectations, for making sure that they comply with the expectations that management has. And there's no better way of doing that by also leading by example from the bottom up. So that also means that you would have a couple of associates, for example, involved in those processes. If you started to look at proactive business development, for example, then you want to have their buy-in. You want to make sure that they also see the bigger picture and what's in it for them, and why you want them to grow and develop. And to your point, start early on in your career. This is an opportunity for them to really start building their book of work, so when they want to become a partner, they are right on track. It's not like a night before, oh, I'm in a partnership track now, I have like a year to sort of like prove myself and go through the process. Where do I get my clients? Where do I get my work? How do I build this? But they are already part of that whole situation and scenario that is going to reveal itself. So definitely bottom up as well. And this also involves, working with your business development and marketing teams to support those processes for your fee earners. So yeah, I think the buy-in needs to come from across the organization. But if you ask me, if you don't lead by example, no one's going to follow you. No one's going to take it seriously. So that's one of the most important factors, I suppose, in the process.
Jason, over to you. Top down versus bottom up, or maybe it's a false dichotomy.
Yeah, hey, look, I couldn't agree more with Barbara. I think we're super aligned there. I think you've got to have top-down support, but you've got to have bottom-up. And so I'll go back to this example of our Associate Business Development and Marketing Initiative. From the outset, we had support from our executive team here at the firm, our leadership. And when we designed this initiative, it was associate-driven. We brought a lot of associates to the table. We talked about various activities. As Barbara mentioned earlier, there are some people, which is always a much smaller percentage, that are going to be those natural rainmakers. Every law firm has them. We're trying to grow more of them. But there's a lot of people that really, that's not what they want to do. So we had to really think about how can we provide incentives to help people build their profile, to perhaps build their network in ways that are authentic and organic to them. So having our associates involved in this process was really important to the success of this program, and it wasn't just a one-time thing. This has evolved since we've started, and it's evolved in large part due to feedback from our associates, and certainly from others in the firm, but primarily from associates on what's working, what's not working, and I think we've done a pretty good job of listening to them, and to the extent possible, modifying our program to align with a lot of different skill sets, a lot of different approaches to business development and to marketing. But I couldn't agree with Barbara more. I think it's critical that in any of these processes with change management, you've got to have bottom-up support, you've got to have top-down support.
Yeah,
it's got to be across the board.
I want to give you a reflection really quickly, Jason, as I hear you speak. I think we're all in agreement here, the importance of sort of top-down, lead from example, but also bottom-up, have everybody bought in. Whenever I think about the associate program, it's almost like you're seeding the top-down buy-in, because the associates are sort of bottom-up being grown into this. And then once they get into the partner level, then they will lead from example, and it's sort of like a virtual cycle. Am I pooling this, or is this where how all of it stacks together a little bit?
No, I think that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately that's the goal.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. We're gonna get into reporting and KPIs. We're doing fantastic on timing. We're gonna go for another 15 minutes, and we're gonna go into reporting KPIs. Before we do, just really quickly, I'd love to hear from everybody in the chat. What's important? What's more important? Top down versus bottom up? Do you need to have both? I know it's sort of a cop out answer. But if you had one level to pull, do you want management and executives to really push this down, or are you wanting sort of the groundswell, a bottom up approach? I'd love to hear your perspective in the chat. Last thing on buy-in from both Barbara and Jason. How does this work at a team level? Everybody knows that there are larger teams and smaller teams. Everybody's important, of course, but how do you think about this from the perspective of the practice groups and just sort of like the structures there? Anything important that we should take away whenever it comes with going into the M&A practice or the major drivers of the practice here? Is there anything specific around coordination between teams? Barbara, anything here that comes up for you?
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that it's, the leadership style does really make a difference in the approach that is being taken. So also within those legal teams, I think it's incredibly important not to be too directive, because that's just basically a top-down approach, which is like, I'm going to tell you what's going to be done, and this is how you're going to do it. Whereas if you take a more sort of like combination of top-down with a bottom-up approach, it's like, okay, this is the direction that we're going in, which has been agreed because it's for the benefit of the firm. But I'd like to hear your views and thoughts as to how we're going to achieve it all together. So then ultimately, people will feel they are part of it. They will be responsible. They will be accountable. And it might vary from team to team how that approach is being taken. But I think it could apply to every team. But it varies because there's different leaders in place, right? And we typically see certain leaders in certain practice areas. I think there's a clear difference usually from my experience between, a corporate leader versus a litigation leader, for example.
Sure.
I'll leave that there.
Yes. I think we all know what we're talking about here. Jason, anything from you, in terms of playing the orchestra here?
Yeah, I'll just offer a couple of thoughts, or a couple of different examples. Our firm's gone through a lot of growth over the course of the last 6-7 years. And as you go through growth and you start to expand into different markets, you acquire firms, your identity changes. And so for us, culture could not be more important. And we went through an initiative last year where we really wanted to redefine our mission, our vision, and our core values. And this touched every single person in our law firm. It was top down, it was bottom up. Our shareholders, our associates, our of counsel attorneys, our paralegals, our professional staff, everybody, clients, thank you. Everybody played a role in helping us get to where we are today, with a very clear vision, a very clear mission, specific core values. It worked incredibly well for us. And I think for our professional staff, that is for all of us that, for our colleagues that are non-lawyers, that's critical in my view. It's so important that they they're a part of the process. They have a voice, and I'm really proud of what we have accomplished in that respect. And similarly, we're revising our strategic plan as a firm, and same thing. Our shareholders, our associates, our paralegals, our professional staff, everybody has a voice in this process. And I think at the end of the day, when we get to the point where we roll out our strategic plan in January 25 or first quarter of 2025, it's going to be far better than if it was driven top down.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay, we got to leave buy-in where it is, but we probably could speak for another 20, 30, 40, 50 hours about buy-in and the nuances of that. Let's go to something that's been a thread that's kind of been going through the entire conversation, and it's reporting and KPIs. KPIs seem, if you're listening to the industry right now, KPIs are on everybody's lips. I got pulled into a community event that I was facilitating the other day about marketing KPIs. when we talk about KPIs and reporting, in this conversation specifically, we've talked about leaderboards, we've talked about gamification, we've talked about remuneration, we've talked about putting it in performance reviews. All of this kind of comes into reporting and KPIs, and you can cut this so many different ways. Jason, whenever you think, I know that you spoke to this earlier about the work that you did in sort of setting up the different point programs. How do you think about reporting and KPIs? What have you seen from the perspective of just understanding what works? I mean, that's where we even start. What gives the motivation? What kind of KPIs do you set them? Do you set them revenue wise? Do you set them action wise? Tell us a little bit about how you think through KPIs and reporting structures.
Yeah, I'll lead back on this associate business development and marketing initiative. With these point values. I mean, one of the things that was really important to us is that we had a good mix of business development activities and marketing activities, right? And the difference between the two, right? Marketing is an awareness profile building, one-to-many activity, whereas business development is one-to-one, it's relationship building. So we wanted to make sure we had a good mix of all of those things, right? At the end of the day, we want to help our associates build their profile, build their networks. And if they're doing various activities, we can almost, from a success standpoint, these behaviors are going to lead to these opportunities, right? We are starting about a year and a half ago, we started to measure revenue growth as it relates to their overall success as well. So that's something that we're reporting on now. But I think, looking at just activity, because we all know it's a numbers game. The more meetings we have with referral sources or prospective clients or with existing clients, we're going to generate new opportunities for ourselves and for the firm. And so, we really looked at activity-based numbers, and now we're starting to tie revenue to that. And we're reporting that firm-wide. We're reporting that on a quarterly basis to our shareholders. We have a year-end report where we're reporting that. And then we're, in terms of just overall measurements, Barbara touched on this a moment ago in terms of reviews. And I participate and evaluate every associate at year end. That's a part of their evaluation. So we look at how they're progressing as a lawyer, how they're progressing as it relates to business development and marketing. And it's different. Again, going back to a first, second, and third year, it's going to look different from what a fifth, sixth, seventh year associate is. So, we grade that and score that, appropriately.
Yeah, so much to say here. Barbara, want to weigh in a little bit about just level setting in terms of KPIs? How have you thought about it? How have you used it? And then we can go into reporting as well, of course, which is just visualizing those KPIs and reporting out. But yeah, how have you seen KPIs work?
Well, very scary what I'm going to say, but it's all about transparency. I know in law firms this is quite a thing. And but it does work. I think if you offer that level of transparency within your partnership, but even I think you should be transparent across the board about your performance, about individuals' performances, not to too granular detail, but if it comes to business development and their activities, I definitely think it's going to help the firm as a whole to grow. I think oftentimes in firms we forget that, and you see this a lot with partners who would say, oh, but these are my clients and my contacts and mine. But actually they're not. They are the firm's clients and the firm's contacts. And I think even reporting on that level of client development, business development, it belongs to the firm. So why can't we be transparent about it? Because the transparency that we would offer through reporting will help us all to feel motivated, right? If something goes really well, we all feel like we've contributed to, the bigger part, to everything that everyone has done collectively. On the other hand, if it doesn't go too well, I think it prompts, food for discussion where you can think about, okay, we need to probably look into doing something differently. We need to change our approach. We need to change our processes. How are we going to do that? Have a discussion together. Invite everyone in to be part of that discussion and part of the solution. It's not a management issue. It's an issue for the firm as a whole. And in my previous role, we have reported and over-reported. Like we had so many reports for everything. Data was key. And I did really appreciate that because it gave so much insight. Obviously, data is a bit, you have to always tell a story around data, and it can be told in many different ways, right? If you wear pink glasses today, then obviously the story is going to be beautiful, and you can even make very bad data look very pretty. So you have to be very careful. But I do think it does tell a certain story, and it gives people a better understanding of where the firm is at, where they are at individually, how the clients move along the sort of like a funnel, etc. So much to tell. And it's nice actually that you touched on the session that you facilitated with regards to marketing, reporting, and KPIs. And I've had conversations recently actually where I told about, the type of reporting that we used to do at my firm. We, as a marketing and business development function, had KPIs. So not only on sort of like progressing potential clients in our key client program, but also including marketing KPIs, like how can we improve our open and click rates on our marketing communications? How can we ensure that we get more engagement from the events that we organize? Are we actually aligned with, what we say is our target audience? Are we able to pull these people into the firm and actually generate leads through that and convert them into actual clients? What is our success rate there? There's so many metrics that we can look at that are hugely interesting. And you can only do that if you have proper reporting in place. So whilst transparency, I appreciate, is scary, I think it's necessary, and it's definitely the future and here to stay.
Jason, I'm going to ask you, because we sort of got into the tough conversations that KPI and reporting get into. I want to ask you, anything there in terms of you have the numbers, you have the KPI, you have the reporting, you have the quote unquote truth. What's positive? What's positive and a way to show up in these meetings that is that's both speaking to the reality while also simultaneously putting people on the path to success? How do you structure those meetings so that they're fruitful?
A couple different ways. One, we have the one-on-one meetings. So we're really talking about individual progression, what they're doing well, how they progress quarter over quarter by way of example. I always try and drill down on those one-on-one sessions of really looking for ways in which, and sometimes it's just little things where attorneys are progressing and
right.
really kind of, because at the end of the day, this is hard, and there's a huge time commitment that goes to it. So I think our roles as a BD and marketing team is to really kind of help with the encouragement, the motivation, helping them think differently about how they can, do X, Y, or Z, because I don't believe this is a one size fits all. And we talked a moment ago about, there are certain things a small portion of lawyers are really good at doing, whereas the majority, this doesn't come easy. They're not trained that way. In terms of the team-based or the broader picture, we spend the bulk of our time talking about the successes, highlighting those successes, reporting on volume of activity, volume of whether it's presentations, articles written, if we're talking about the marketing thought leadership stuff, we look at meetings with referral sources, meetings with clients, number of client meetings that they led. We get a lot of visibility into, our associates and the shareholders that allow them to lead client meetings. That's a nice progression. So we highlight that, we focus on that. So we're really transparent. And I think Barbara was hit it on the head. I think there has to be transparency. And I'll just add one other thing for the group. This program that we put into place was so successful that as of July 1 of this year, we introduced an associate origination compensation policy. And I think that's fairly unique. And this, I applaud our leadership. I applaud our board. I applaud our shareholders for understanding the importance of aligning this more significant incentive with the behavior that we're asking our associates and our attorneys to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. When things are so successful, they become law, right? In
Yeah.
a sense, incredible.
Yeah.
I want to do 30 seconds on technology. We'll probably have to have a round two on technology, but where does technology sort of come in here today? Is it enabling sort of the activity of the business development? Is it on the reporting side and sort of having one source of truth? Is it a little bit of both? How have you guys thought about implementing sort of technology into this business development alignment and action program?
You want me to start, Barbara?
Yeah, go for
I'll
it.
just jump in real quick on this. I think technology is critical. And reporting is critical, right? For this program that I've been talking a lot about for our associates, having the reporting in place and utilizing technology to drive this information efficiently, and to have a platform that our associates are able to enter their weekly activities in under 5 minutes or less. That, in my view, if you can't get over that hurdle, you're not going to have a successful program. And that was so successful that we are talking with your team right now, Ben and Barbara, about migrating all of our reporting into Nexl. So all of our associates are utilizing Nexl. Their business development and marketing plans reside in Nexl now. They're managing their relationships and their contacts through Nexl. And the next step in this journey for us is to get the reporting into Nexl. I believe there's so much efficiency in that. And it's so we couldn't be more excited about how successful we've been in terms of reporting on our current platform. And looking forward to this next step to have Nexl be a kind of a 360 solution for all of our lawyers.
Yeah. Barbara, before you jump in, and then we want to leave a couple minutes. Everybody get your questions ready for Barbara and Jason, because we only have them for a couple more minutes. But before, I'd love to hear from everybody in the chat right now. Do you use reporting and KPIs within your firm? And if so, what type? If you can tell us, and we want to know, pretty please, I want to know. So Barbara, where does technology land here in terms of everything that we've talked about today?
Yeah, so before I jump in, Jason, I'm glad to hear that you are enjoying the product as much as I do and did when I worked at my previous firm, because I have a very similar experience. And it's effectively, as you said, it's a game changer because it offers that level of transparency. And mostly, I know that one of Nexl's core values is collaboration, but it's actually true. Like, it does help with collaboration massively. So the whole sort of like technology piece, I think we can't do without anymore. You could, but you would be losing out if you weren't using technology. And yeah, for us in that firm, we've used it for, I think, nearly 3 years, and they're still using it. It's just been a huge uplift in terms of collaboration, in terms, bottom line revenue increase, developing clients. Jason, you said it right a couple of minutes ago about focus on your existing clients. I think that's the core of what this type of technology does very well. Your existing client base is an absolute gold mine. And all of a sudden, all of this information just appears on your screen in a logical way. So, it helps also with, a previous topic that we discussed, Ben, buy-in. When people see it in front of them, it's no longer like yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. The BD team have a wonderful idea, but how's this going to work? And then everyone gets back to the day-to-day billable hour. That's the most important thing at the end of the day. But this just makes sense because everyone can see it.
I love it. All right. We have come to the end. We're going to share a little bit of time. Please put your questions in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask Jason and Barbara some questions, please do that as well. I'll kick us off just in case everybody's thinking of their questions. Barbara, Jason, if you had to measure one KPI whenever it came to incentivizing and driving business development, what would it be? What would it be? What have you seen?
Good question.
Okay. Jason, anything off the top of your head? I've heard, I've heard throughout my career, I've heard meetings booked, meetings booked
Yeah.
with there's something specific around meetings being the unit of the unit of activity that drives sort of things forward. But yeah, Jason, anything off the top of your head or that you've seen that you love these days in terms of measuring?
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's two things. One is weekly reporting, right?
Right.
Because we're trying to create habit, right? We're trying to create habit. We're trying to make this a consistent part of their daily or at least their weekly practice. But the second thing, you hit it on the head, Ben, is meetings, right? We
Yeah.
want our attorneys out in front of their clients. We want them out in front of prospective clients. We want them out there building their referral network. So for me, meetings and FaceTime, few things beat that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Are-
For us, sorry, Ben, for us it was slightly differently. I think it was more about the bigger picture. So
Yeah.
we looked more at like percentage increase of existing clients in the key client program, for example, or
Yeah.
we looked at how well we have sort of like cross-sold or collaborated on particular clients with other, legal departments, with other practice
Yes.
areas.
Got it. Yes, got it. It's sort of a nice granular versus big picture, and see how those two things come together. Yeah, if I was if I was a lawyer, I'm no longer one, but if I was one, I'd want to be measured on numbers of events attended. I think that I could crush that number. So that would be incredible. Just send me. It doesn't even matter. Dubai,
That's
Salt
right.
Lake City, on the slopes. It's all good. All
Yeah.
right, everybody. So we've come kind of to the end here, and I want to hear any questions if anybody wants to unmute yourself. Otherwise, we're just going to give everybody some time back. Emma, any questions for it, or did we answer every single thing that whenever it came to incentives, reporting, and buy-in?
I am just waiting. There seems to be a couple of people typing vigorously in the chat. But Marie said that this was great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marie.
Michael mentioned that they use primarily top-down because associates tend to follow the lead of the partners. However, my coaching with associates emphasizes building their personal brand and networking to create a path to partnership.
Nice. We love to
If
hear
there's
it.
any other comments in here? We have a question for Jason. Could you give us a couple more examples and corresponding points in the weekly reports?
Yeah, sure. I'll just go through kind of a handful of things that that we think about in terms of having a mixture of what we believe to be important marketing activities and what we believe to be important business development or relationship building activities. So we provide incentives or points, for example, for associates that attend firm-sponsored events. For associates that get on a committee, whether that is through a state bar, or it could be a trade association committee or board, or it could be a nonprofit committee or board. We provide points not only for getting on those respective, for obtaining those respective positions, but also for attending those events. We give associates points, and we track obviously meetings that they are client meetings that they're leading. Meetings with prospective clients, meetings with referral sources, and of course we ask who these clients are in our reporting process, or who these referral sources are. Opening new matters, writing articles, writing, for instance, a client alert. One thing that all of us struggle with is getting representative matters or transactions, summaries of those. So we provide incentive and points for associates that do that. Obviously, opening new matters, opening a new matter in a service area that we haven't previously provided the client. There's a difference in points there. Originating a new client, obviously that's the end goal. But there's a variety of activities, and we didn't want to get too crazy on this. But if I look at our schedule, there's probably about 20 to 22 different activities where we will give points to, and then inevitably at times something will come up that an associate will say, have you considered this? So we'll look at that. But I think it's it's an important, for us, it was really important to have a good mixture of those types of activities that are either profile building or relationship building.
Yeah, amazing. All right. I think we are going to wrap up here. It was my absolute pleasure to sit down today with Jason and Barbara to go over all things driving business development as OneFirm. We went over incentive structures. Jason gave us a little bit of insight into his associate program. Barbara told us a little bit about business development challenges. We then went into buy-in and top-down and bottom-up. It was absolutely fantastic. I think we all agreed that it's a little bit of both, and you just have to like sort of right size it based on where things are at. It is a dance, but all of you on this call can definitely know how to dance that dance. And finally, the importance of KPIs and reporting structures. It's cliche, but what gets measured, what gets managed, and all of that. And these three things together, I think, can put everybody on a fast track toward a lot of business development success, which we really wish you. KPIs and reporting are a huge topic today in this industry, and I think it's only going to get bigger. So we're very excited. So thank you again to you, the audience, and thank you again to Jason and Barbara for sitting down today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Ben, Barbara, Emma, and Nexl team, thanks for having us, and for all of you that joined us today. We appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
we are going to wrap up. We will see everybody very, very soon for another OneFirm webinar. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.